See how wide you can make this thing. Quicker than you, entering turn 5. Track limits. Okay, Brian, 10 minutes to go. That's 10 minutes left.
Hey guys, it's Initial B here and welcome to another video. So today we've got another GT3 fixed race for you guys. This time it's in the BMW M4 GT3. So you know the deal by now. We're going to take you through a quali lap. So it's important here to get the entry into the last corner right, as it gets us to a very long straight. Just get the momentum going. So this is going to be my second lap in the quali session. The first lap that I did was okay, but it could be improved on a little bit more. So but it's very easy to absolutely do your tyres in here. So braking at the second cone marker, keeping it nice and tight. Curbs here give you so much grip, and it's very easy to try and get an off track when you come back in. Here we brake at the second marker here, and it's important to not run too wide here, as you will end up with an off track. So we've got another long straight here. We've got a chance to calm down. Road America is a very much a momentum-based track. It does have long straights, but the set of corners here can be tricky to navigate. So here we brake just before the second marker and keeping it nice and tight, almost using the dip in the curb to our advantage to swing the car in. Here it's a blind corner, so nailing it perfectly here. Great exit, and using the grooves in the track to work out when exactly we're going to turn here. If you go too wide here, you're basically spinning the car around. Here we brake just before the second marker and using the dip again to swing the car into the corner. Now this is a really fun corner. It's a very long right-hander, but again, it's important not to run too wide and just keep it close to the track, and then when you're feeling brave enough, just get the throttle back on and get it going. Typically, I wouldn't think this is flat out, but in these cars somehow it is. There's a lot of downforce in the setup on the BMW, and it's really nice to navigate through the corners here. So coming up just before the 3 marker here, and again, dipping the tyre into the curb and just getting as brave as we can on exit, getting the throttle on as early as possible. Here we flat. It's important to not take the line wrong, otherwise you'll push you far to the right. And here braking where the change in the tone of the track is, and then onto the final corner, onto the back straight. And there we have it, a quali lap of Road America. Now this was good enough. This is good enough to get us into P5 effectively, but it was a very high strength of field. So in this case it was 3.8k, and I thought I'd cut forward a little bit, as this is one of those tracks where you have to do a full parade lap rather than a partial one. So it's a little bit long at just over 2 minutes a lap. It can certainly feel like an eternity going round. So what I quite liked about this race is there was a lot of diversity amongst the cars here. So I think I was the quickest BMW, but we still had a Audi, we had a Porsche, we had a McLaren all the way up at the front. We've got Lamborghinis just behind us, we had Ferraris in the grid. So really, really mixed grid, and it's nice to see that, again, the balance of performance here is, you know, it's not perfect, but it does allow, so depending on what car you favour, you can pretty much smash it. So we didn't get the greatest start, but it's important here to try and get our nose in a little bit. And when I look back at the replay here, a bit of netcode unfortunately in that situation, but I didn't have anywhere else to go really. So, and then I had to defend so hard from the car behind here and trying to keep up with the cars in front. So not the cleanest start, but at least we didn't suffer damage too much. And here again, because we've got a lot more downforce than other cars on the grid, it's a little bit tricky here, as we've got to defend from so early on. It doesn't have as high of a top speed, so we're trying to keep up with the slipstream of the leaders up in front, but equally we're trying to defend hard from the car behind. And bearing in mind, this is a 20-minute race, so people will be pulling out all the stops that they can in order to get ahead. And like I mentioned here, it's so easy to go off track here, as the Audi in front gets a little bit loose, so it drops back closer to us. So now it's really our opportunity to help push as much as we can. With cars here, it's very hard to just keep the throttle on. Again, as much as I said GT3 cars don't produce as much dirty air, it's still there effectively, so that's something that we have to be really, really mindful of. So let me talk you through what we're driving here today. So we are in the BMW M4 GT3. So front engine car, doesn't yet officially compete in any series as of yet. I think the closest that it's done is done a test run in the Nürburgring VLN earlier this year, and as controversial as the car looks, actually it's come a long way since it was introduced into the iRacing service. So it came on as a prototype, it was developed through the use of the game, and now it's in fully fledged form with what we expect to be racing in 2022. Now, with a front engine car, yes, you do get a little bit more understeer and you have to be more careful on the brakes, but you still have to trail brake. I mean, I'm trail braking into this corner right there. But with a front engine car, it means the rear is a little bit more loose. So if you want to basically get the car going, you almost have to stamp on the throttle a little bit to get the car rotating in the right direction, and then just manage the throttle input effectively. Can be very fun to drive, but it really depends on the track that you're on. So with Road America, because we don't really have any true slow corners, I mean, we never go beyond second gear here. It flows quite nicely. With the fact that it's a momentum track, actually with this car, it handles the high-speed corners really, really well. Now, when I looked at previous results and I was trying to decide what car to drive, I was thinking of the Audi R8 because it seemed to be the car of choice effectively for this particular race, but actually it goes back down to what you prefer driving. So last week I drove the Lamborghini Huracan, and that suited really well for the narrow corners, the low speed corners of the Hungaroring. But actually here the BMW comes in a league of its own, and it's so stable to drive that it's actually quite a joy, and you can really try and push it. I had to actually turn down the brake sensitivity on my setup just to get more out of the brakes. I mean, with the Lamborghini, you kind of have to dab on the brakes a little bit. You don't want to stamp it all together, because otherwise the car will just want to rotate. Whereas here, actually, because you've got the engine at the front, it's a lot more stable and you can really make the most out of it. So what I'm going to do now is show you guys what this car sounds like from a third-person perspective. So here we go. can't say it's got the grunt of a Lamborghini or a Porsche, but it does have its signature sound, so you know exactly when a BMW is passing by when you hear it, effectively. So skipping forward just a little bit, there's a threat coming behind from Oliver, and you'll see that I didn't really try to defend too much here. I just thought, let him get past me, because otherwise we'll just end up losing too much time trying to battle. So I thought, okay, let me just try and see how long I can hold it for without letting the guys behind getting too close. But saying that, the battle isn't quite over yet. We still got a long way to go in this race, so I thought I would give it another go later on. So we're just going to follow through this lap at the moment, and I'm getting quite close to Oliver. Again, he's lost the slipstream, and I'm still fairly close to him, so I thought, right, I'm going to use this opportunity to try and get as close as I can and just be patient. In these cars, it's all about the patience game. The slipstream isn't as strong as you'd find, let's say, in a Le Mans prototype or an F1 car, for example. But saying that, the speed differential in some of these cars is very apparent, especially when you're out of the slipstream. So the Porsche, I think, is commonly known as being the least powerful car, but the balance of performance has basically been brought down to the effect that the Porsche becomes competitive. I think they had issues in the DTM this year where, because of the Porsche not having as much of high-end horsepower, effectively, they just thought they'd just bring every car down, and I almost end up in the back of Oliver over here, but that's okay. We try and keep it as clean as possible, and the guys in front are just battling ahead, so this is great for us. Here I just get pushed out a little bit too wide. Again, it's the dirty air, plus I just missed my braking point. But here I just lift off a little bit. Normally, if you don't have a car in front of you, you can try and take it flat. But that's not to say, you know, you don't want to take the risk here, because effectively you want to make it to the end of the corner. Otherwise, you'll just send your car spinning round like there's no tomorrow. So keeping as close as we possibly can here. And he's about to fight the Macca ahead of us, effectively. And you'll notice here a little clip from Crew Chief.
Let's see how wide you can make this thing. Quicker than you, entering turn 5.
And as much as he says make the car as wide as possible, I don't think he meant it literally, so that was a little error on my part. But I'm glad that happened, because he absolutely bins it in the next corner. And that gives us a little bit of breathing room to just get our 5th position back, because that's where we effectively started. So fast forwarding a little bit, we then receive a threat from the car behind. Now we've got a little bit of a relative consistent pace here, but as the track started to become warmer, because it is at the start of the day, the track only gets warmer as it gets closer to noon afternoon. But here we just try and place our car strategically. He couldn't really make the move there, otherwise basically both of us would be out of action there. But the tyres really start to fall off here, and with the recent tyre model change, really your first or second lap will be your quickest lap on this tyre set. Everything else, it peaks a little bit. There's a part where it's almost like the tyres are graining. I guess that's the way to explain it, but you just lose grip all of a sudden, and then you start getting it back gradually. I mean, at the end of the race, the tyres were still around the 90-80% mark, so it's not like they were completely worn out, it's just the way this tyre model operates. So we're trying our hardest here to keep Patrick behind us. I mean, he showed really good pace through this race and even made a daring move on Gregor earlier on. But really, it's about trying to minimize or make no mistakes whatsoever, and it's just so difficult. I mean, yes, it's a 20-minute race, but you are pushing flat out, so you really have to concentrate and just make sure that you don't overdrive the car. Yes, they have traction control, yes, they have ABS, but it's still possible to overdrive these. You could lock up somewhere, you could touch the grass, and it just completely destabilizes the car to the point where you completely spin off. So at this point, I'm just going on the defensive. He's used the slipstream to try and get ahead of me, but I've got the inside line here, so there is nowhere else for him to go, or just back out slightly. But he's going to try and save his efforts at the moment, because you can't really overtake in this section and you can't really make a dive over here, so he's just going to save his run for the main straight. I didn't necessarily get the best exit here, so this is his opportunity to effectively make the most of the slipstream, but we're not going to give up that easy at the end of the day, right? We're going to make him absolutely work for it. So he goes around the outside. I think, right, I can brake as late as I possibly can and still maintain the line. And as I did here, executed it absolutely beautifully. And he's got threat from the car behind effectively, where he made a complete dive. And that means that while we were able to stick to our line and get the best exit out, it gives us a little bit of breathing room to effectively get on with the race. And as we skip forward a little bit, we get the white flag on this lap, meaning that it is the last lap of this race. And really at this stage, it's about bringing it home. I think I basically fended off the threat from Patrick at this stage, and I think he basically backed out a little bit. I mean, saying that, he was still pushing because he had Gregor behind him, so he had to defend his position. But at this point, I think we had quite the solid run. I mean, in a 3.8k strength of field, I didn't expect to be where I am. These GT3 cars are, well, like I mentioned, they are quite straightforward to drive. To really push them, to really make the most out of them, it is so tricky. I mean, the car that finished P1 effectively did a lap time of 2.03 something effectively, and I ended up doing a 2:04.0 in effect, which really shows you the difference. And it's not like we're not driving similar cars. I think he was in the Porsche in the end, which in the 40-minute version of this race, where you can have custom setups, the Porsche is absolutely OP, so completely overpowered. But actually in the fixed race, it was really a close match effectively between the Porsche, the Audi and the BMW. But the good thing is we don't necessarily can call ourselves sheep here, because we made our own choice. I think the majority of the people that I saw in the results picked the Audi, but actually I felt that this was the better car for me to drive in effect. So coming up to the last few corners, just taking it easy here, just about bringing it home. You never want to make any crucial errors to the point where you go too wide, the car gets flown out, or you touch the grass, so you end up typically choosing to take a more conservative line. But as we make it through the last corner, down the final straight, he's too far behind to effectively get even close to us. So, and there's the finish flag, and that effectively brings us home in P5. So a great result overall, and there we have it. So there we have it, another successful run to some degree. I mean, it's P5, but in such a high strength of field race, I will happily take that. It's so hard to keep the position there from time to time, but we had more battles there, which is what we like to see. Sometimes you have to pick them. It's better to let someone pass early so you don't lose too much time, but then you can get them back later. You don't want to battle too much, otherwise you end up falling away from the leaders effectively. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Until the next time, take care guys.